My name is Jerome, and I'm presenting my Unit 15 assignment, which is Current Issues in Sport. To start off our slides, we're going to be talking about the development of professional football in the UK. Now, football can date back as late as the 3rd century BC, where they played games that not necessarily were called football, but represented, the kind of gist of the game. Back in these times of football, though, rules were very, limited on what they were and what you could do in the game. So things like punching, kicking the ball, punching punching the ball, and being more aggressive with other players wasn't necessarily a problem. As the years moved on, obviously football as a sport developed itself, and it became a more controlled and regulated game. These rules and regulations started around the 19th century, and were put in place to sort of, make football a more safe and fun and, more, I guess, inclusive game for everyone. In October 26th, 1863, the FA was put in place. Now, the FA is an organisation of people who actually created the rules, started the basis of the rules that you would see today in current football. Now, these rules were put in place through different clubs, and the first game of football with rules was actually played on the 9th of January 1964. We've got a little diagram here of sort of the rules book that they created. In 1871, the Challenge Cup was established, and the rules that were already in place became a bit more of an issue because not all the clubs were following the rules. So it's kind of like a bit of a mix mash of the rules, and they weren't set in place properly. So in 1877, a final confirmed set of rules were put in place, which all clubs and organisations followed. The first league was created in 1888, which consists of a few different clubs coming together and creating your league matches, which will now see things like the Premier League and so on and so forth. Our next set of slides, we're going to talk about how the influence of football governing bodies and the regulation of football in the UK. Now, governing bodies are responsible for a variety of different things. They control and regulate the environment of the sport. They make sure it's a safe environment as well, make sure it's safe for all the teams and players. They help develop the sport, so things like promotion and stuff like that. They help with that section. And they help to promote and administrate participation within the sports. Now, an example of a governing body would be the FA. Obviously, they provide us with the rules and regulations of football. So again, it's more controlled and safe sport. An example of something they have created and put in place are that football matches are 90 minutes, and that halves are 45 minutes each with a little break in the middle. Another rule is that things like, your studs have to be a certain length, or rules such as like your foot can't go above a player's head, because you can get things like red cards and yellow cards. So these little rules and regulations they've put in place around for all football matches to make sure they're safe and fun. Now, governing bodies such as the FA or FIFA are very important to ensure that not only the sport is run smoothly, but it's also safe for all the players. And that it's all inclusive. A long time ago, again, in back when football was first being started and played, it wasn't necessarily a game for all, and there wasn't many rules. And like I said, things like pushing, shoving, punching the ball were allowed. Now in recent more times, these have been abolished, and there's more stronger set rules put in place. Now, some of the ways you may see them do this is through things like fair play and producing campaigns. The FA engage in a range of different campaigns such as kick up, heads up, play safe. These I've got my words here. These campaigns help support things such as mental health, discrimination, safeguarding, preventing racism, and all these different types of things. Now, we're going to talk about the influence of media on football in the UK. Now, again, as I've said, as football's progressed, things like media and technology have also progressed with it. Now, technology we use, the media refers back to, things like television, radio, press conferences, and social media. Obviously, the media can have a both positive and negative effect on football. Obviously, positively, it will help not only promote the sport, but also, help to show the rules and regulations of the game. So those who are interested in it, kind of get a gist of what they're going to be getting into. It also, it also helps to bring new faces to the sport. Seeing, maybe someone that you're very inspired by play on the TV, you might be like, oh, okay, cool, maybe that's something I want to do now. And it kind of just helps bring new faces to it. Obviously, there can be some negative sides of it, in the sense of media can, promote negative things, such as, if a player's, something bad about players happen, the media might change the story slightly and it might promote something bad and, something that's false. Obviously, media also helps for the sport, to almost be very all-inclusive, for those who might not be able to get out of the house or afford to go and pay, hundreds of pounds for a ticket to watch a game at a stadium. It makes them be able to watch it from the comfort of their own homes, on their television, at any time, any place. Those who might, work, they can't watch the games live. They're able to watch back, on their phones or whatever apps they're using and watch these games. So it's really helped for that. Oh, I think I just skipped a slide there. So we're going to talk about contemporary issues that can... Oh, sorry, I've just skipped the slide there, sorry. We're talking about technology first. And again, the effects on football. So similar to media, obviously technology, it's just shot through the roof. From back when football first started to now, it's completely changed. We've got things like VAR, we've got, playbacks, all these different types of things that, you can see in technology, in football and sport as a generic, subject. In football alone, we've got a range of different types of technology. We've got, pieces of technology that can track players, a player's movement across the pitch, how they're moving across the pitch, which is really vital for coaches to see, right, are they being positioned correctly? Are they utilising their space? You can track their stats, so heart rate, how many calories they're burning, how much they're sprinting, all these different types of things we can track. Things like VAR really helped, before when we didn't have VAR, it is just off of what they've, what someone might have seen or might not have seen. So decisions may have been unjust. Whereas now we've got VAR, we can really see, did the ball go over the line? Did it not go over the line? Was he offside? Was he not offside? Which is, really help just kind of support the sport and just make it a bit more fun, I guess, because, the times where we didn't have VAR, I'm just using VAR as an example, people might have got, frustrated because something might not have actually happened and they're being told it did happen. So it just makes it a lot more fair, and just more safe as well. We can track players' stats and, maybe their heart rate's really high throughout a game, which, might lead to them having an underlying health condition, which, the coaches and their physios and stuff like that can kind of, pick up on that. So now we can talk about contemporary issues that can affect football. So there's a range of different contemporary issues that can be seen through football and sport as a generic, thing. Things like deviance, gameship, child protection, inclusion, racism, commercialization, and globalization are all different things that you may see in football or sport. We're just going to talk about two today. So we're going to talk about gamesmanship to start with. Now, gamesmanship is a tricky one. Gamesmanship is essentially almost like unwritten rules. So you can't. It's where a player would bend the rules to the point where what they're doing is not illegal. They can't be reprimanded for it, but it's not fair. So an example could be, if a player was to perform a typically harsh tackle on another player and got them to the ground, non-gamemanship behaviour would be, you're not going to help them up, you're just going to leave them, but you're not going to help them back up, even though it was your fault. And what typically will happen is that these players will play off of this unfair advantage to give them the advantage over their opposition. So again, gamesmanship is very hard for refs to manage because and people to manage because they're not doing anything wrong in the sense of they're not breaking rules. They're more a fact of just bending the rules. The next one we're going to talk about is racism. Now, the FA and other leading governing bodies in football and sports work together to ensure racism is abolished and, prohibited during their games. Now, organisations such as Kick Out were created to help abolish and prevent the racism by educating people on the matter. Clubs have also come forward with their own rules and regulations on how they will help reduce and prevent racism from happening within their club, because again, it's not fair for the players to have to experience that. So some examples are, here's a few reports from 2019. So teams play behind closed door was for fans was a title on a report. There was 2 teams and there'd been some racism going on throughout the stadium. So due to this, they made the 2 teams play behind closed doors, and so fans couldn't watch because of that. Certain clubs would put lifetime bans introduced. Certain clubs, where I think Chelsea was one, there was a time where people were shouting out racist abuse, and they got lifetime bans and weren't allowed to watch the games anymore. Again, these are all things clubs are trying to put in place to help reduce this and stop this from happening. Now, barriers in sport. Now, there are a plethora of different barriers that people may, come to and have to face throughout their lifetime of going through sport. Now, the barriers we all face can differ. Not everyone's the same. So one barrier you may face may be different from the next person. I've listed a few different barriers here. So the first one we're going to talk about is money. Now, obviously, money is quite standard, straightforward one. We might see this as one of the most common ones. Is it allows to buy equipment, to pay for facilities, and even the coaches. So if someone doesn't have enough money or can't afford something, it's going to prohibit them from participating in a sport because they can't afford to keep up with it. Equipment, again, this will kind of tie into money. If equipment isn't available and you can't afford it, and it's not of good standard, again, depending on the level of sport you're doing, it's going to really affect you, and it could stop you from competing in sports. An example could be athletics. You need spikes for the track. Now, you might get away with it in the summer. You might be able to wear trainers, or a very broken down pair of spikes. But the second it starts to get wet weather and the surface becomes more slippy, you really need a good quality pair of spikes that are going to be able to last you. Because otherwise, it might stop you from doing the sport. Because coaches may go, no, it's not safe for you to do it, and it also might give you a disadvantage for the players or the people you're going to be running against who do have the better equipment. And another one we're is coaching. Access into coaching can help improve an individual's or in team's performance. So again, if you can't get a good coach or a coach at all, that might, and you're just going off of self-taught, you're going to be at a very big disadvantage compared to those who do have a high-level coach or do have a coach as in general. It just really, it depends. And in some cases, you can come over these barriers and there is a chance, but in other cases, there is some circumstances where, the barriers you may face aren't really something you can physically change. You just need to be able to overcome them in the sense of, race, age, and gender. These are all things that barriers you may face, but you can't change your race and you can't change your age. So, in that sense, it's in some them circumstances, you can't really necessarily, change what's happening. You just need to try and overcome it and think of another plan, if that makes sense. Next, we're talking about cultural influences on sports participation. Now, there are different cultural influences that may, again, people may face when it comes to sport. These can be from gender, ethnicity, and age. If we're talking about gender, sport can be a very male-dominated just thing in general, which can make it hard for women to feel encouraged to attend and compete in certain sports. Now, there's a few reasons why this can stem from. Firstly, back in a long time ago, women weren't seen to be able to do sport. They weren't allowed to do sport. If anything, they actually weren't allowed to. It was seen almost crazy if a woman even attempted to do that. Obviously, times have changed now, but sometimes people's views haven't changed. Times have changed, but people's views still might not have changed. So women can still find it daunting to have to approach and try and compete in these sports. There's lack of role models. There being a lack of women doing sports, that thus makes a lack of role models. So women may feel less motivated than men to go and do sport because they haven't got anyone to look up to and follow. And just lack of opportunity is proven that women will get less opportunities than men within sport specifically, which obviously is not fair, and obviously again reduces the amount of sport they can compete in. Ethnicity is a really important factor in the sense of sport. We need to make sure all sports are inclusive, no matter your race, ethnicity, gender. But ethnicity can play a big part on sport and what sport people choose. I mean, again, talking a long time ago, things like race, is really quite bad for some certain racial backgrounds, and they weren't allowed to participate in sports. If you're talking things like religion, the Muslim community, women aren't allowed to show lots of bits of skin, and they have to have their hair covered up. So that prohibits them from doing certain sports, because if there's males, so they're not allowed to show males their skin. So if there's a sport that has males in it, they're not going to be able to do that sport because they're going to have to stay covered, and that might prohibit them because they can't wear certain equipment or certain clothing, and it makes it quite hard for them. And certain sports such as rugby, which we researched, is it can be seen as a alcoholic culture, therefore making it these religions who don't drink or are against drinking, it might make them hard for them to join. And then age is quite a difficult one. So as you age, things get tougher. Flexibility, strength, aerobic respiration, all these different things, they get harder. The sports you may be able to play when you was 20 versus when you were 40 are going to be completely different. And you might still be able to play those same sports, but you might not be able to play them as long. So it might stop you from playing certain sports, and it just kind of limit you on what you can and can't do. Strategies and initiatives on sport participation. Now, there are different strategies that companies have put in place to increase sport participation, and I've listed 3 here, which we'll quickly, briefly talk about. So we've got Women in Sport. Now, this charity was founded in 1984, and the main aim was to give women the chance to compete in sport, basically, and give women and girls all around the UK opportunity to experience the transformation rewards in sport. Now, their vision was to just basically give women equal rights to and opportunities to and increase opportunities to competing in sports, which was obviously a great thing that's been put in place. And since then, there have been a lot more opportunities for women to compete in sports. The next one we're going to talk about is Plan for Sport. Now, this is a company that was established in 2003, and it's essentially an organisation which supports, governing bodies in the areas of equality, diversity, inclusion, mental health, and well-being. So some of the ones we talked about before, which was like Kick Out, about racism. These sort of companies, they all play into this, and they just kind of help, support those who have, put in programs and opportunities for those who maybe were struggling with mental health or race or things like that, and make it a bit more inclusive to them minorities who do struggle. And now the last one as well is TASS. Now, this is a very interesting one. So this is a partnership that was funded by Sport for England, and it's essentially a programme for those who, I think it was 16 plus. And it's sort of similar to things like a Duke of Edinburgh, but this is a lot more sport-based. And it basically gives the opportunity for those who are of a good level of sport to essentially represent England and perform at the top of the English team. So if they you have to have certain what's the word, eligibility to get into this, but if you meet the requirements, I mean, you can be put forward to things like the Olympics and so on if they think you're good enough. And you know, things like strength and conditioning programs, lifestyle support, medical support, nutritional support, coach support. You'll get all of these things through this company, which again offers those who might not come from a background of, you know, lots of money, but they're good at their sport and they're good at what they do, and they can be put on these programs and, you know, put forward to something they might not be able to achieve. So obviously, in conclusion, we've been able to talk about a range of different issues and factors which affect football and sport. We've discussed technology and how it's changed over the years and how it's affected football and sport as a whole. We've talked about different strategies that organisations have put in place to, you know, prevent things like racism, discrimination, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And that's me.